All right, we good?
Yeah.
We're just sorting out some tech things on the back end here because this is a new platform for us. And we are missing one of our speakers. I think he's here. He looks like he's here, but I'm not sure if the tech is working with us for that. So hopefully Max will be able to show up when he can. So in the meantime, we're just going to get started. So welcome everybody. This is our roundtable. My name is Steph. My company is Clarity Web Design Studios. We're here in Nova Scotia, so our speakers today are covering a nice little range of time zones. We are focused on helping women entrepreneurs have websites that make you money, essentially. So this is part one of a two-part presentation that we are running. It's focused exclusively on helping women business owners get more traffic to your websites so that you can make more money in your business and so that you can create the kind of results that you want and maybe even help you to exceed your own expectations. So today is part one. I'm just going to do a quick little welcome and a little overview. It's all about bringing together a diverse group of experts in the online digital industry to talk about how to get more traffic to your website. We're going to talk about things that have worked for us, genuinely, really, and truly. And I would also like you to stay tuned because we're going to drop a link in the chat a couple of times throughout this conversation with a workshop that we're going to be hosting next week. It's an invite-only webinar. And that's going to be all about how you can double your website traffic in 60 days. For now, so that webinar is not going to be available to just anybody. It's invitation only. So we're going to teach you a lot today. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things, but so I want you to keep in mind there's a lot more where this comes from. This is just going to kind of skim the surface, really. But the best part is that when you can learn from us and from next week's webinar, if you're able to sign up for that, you'll be able to start to truly take advantage of your website as a marketing hub for your business, which is what it's intended technically to be. And when you can do that, you can make data-driven decisions in your investing, in your business decisions. You can stop stepping over the free traffic that you're probably missing out on today and might not even realize. So we've invited 3 guests here today to discuss some of the strategies that we have used ourselves over the years to turbocharge our own website traffic or the traffic for our clients. So I'd like you to introduce you. We're going to start with Afton Rizzoni. Afton is the founder of Scribe National. She is a content marketing strategist and writer who works with tech companies, leadership coaches, and other B2B brands to help them build trust and drive sales through messaging and content. And then Maxwell is next on my list, and we can't see Maxwell yet, so I'm going to introduce Maxwell in hopes that he can hear us and might be able to jump in when he can. Maxwell is known as the blind blogger. He is passionate about online accessibility and inclusion from the point of view of communication and collaboration instead of shame. Maxwell is an online accessibility expert, columnist, podcaster, and blogger. Tara Conway is an innovative, inclusive, and insatiably curious digital pioneer and retail executive with over 20 years in the digital industry. Tara inspires and drives innovation with unwavering determination to bring transformation and growth. And I am Steph Sedgwick. I'm the founder of Clarity Web Design Studio. We're a web design agency. We're based in Nova Scotia. I am a web designer and a web accessibility advocate. My team specializes in creating and managing user-friendly websites and on-site SEO, specifically for female founders and entrepreneurs. So I want to say welcome to our speakers and our guests. The other person you might see on your screen right now is Catherine. Catherine is part of my team here at Clarity Web Design Studio, and she's going to be my tech assistant for today. She's already helped me enormously just getting this started. So I want to thank you all for joining us in this space and taking the time today to have this genuine conversation. I'm going to warn you up front, I like our attendees to feel free to post comments in the chat. Catherine's going to keep an eye on that for me. There's no obligation to do that, but I want to encourage you to participate if you want, and I'm going to ask questions from time to time as well. I'm going to rely on Catherine again. So we're going to dive in. So this is my little overview of what we're going over today. We're talking about websites. Congratulations, you're in the right place. The really basic piece of this overview is going to sound really simple. Maxwell, you made it. We can see you now. Can you hear us? Maybe not. Okay, we'll give him some time. So when I say that we're giving a really basic overview of websites today, I mean basic in terms of the foundation. It's not like just the easy stuff, because the foundation is not actually all that easy, right? But it's the whole reason that we have a website in the first place. There's different intentions behind having a website. So I'm curious, for the people that are here today and attending, why do you have a website? What's the point of having a website in the first place for you in your business? And if you can take some time and put it in the chat, I would love to see what you say. And I hope that works, because I don't know how to see it. Hopefully Catherine can see what comes up in the chat.
I'm keeping an eye on it.
Okay. Is there anything showing up in there? Anybody jumping in? So maybe nobody wants to talk. That's okay.
I think we're a bit shy still.
That's okay. So generally speaking, I think most people say that when they, or at least when they come to us after they've had a website for a while, they usually say that they have a website because they were told they needed one. There's never really a really clear answer to why they set it up, other than maybe it was on a checklist that somebody gave them when they started their business back in the day. There was never really any solid guidance around how to use that website or what to do with it after they launched it. They were just told they needed to have a website. They don't really know necessarily, like they have some sort of vague idea about, you know, brand awareness and increased traffic and maybe getting more recognition for their business, but there's not really a solid sense of how that's going to happen or what they should do with it after it gets live, you know, or even how they should build it in the first place. So I'm going to jump in there and see if Maxwell can hear us now. Can you hear us, Max? Nope. Okay. We'll see if Max can maybe join into the conversation, hopefully. And meanwhile, I'll just keep on talking. So the question around the why do you have a website and what's the point? That was the first question. The next question, and this one might, Tara, might make you laugh a little bit, given your history through so many significant changes in the online industry. My next question for the attendees was going to be, how did you decide that you needed to have a website? Was it something that somebody told you you should do? Was it something about maybe some business loan, you know, needed to verify that you are who you say you are? Or maybe you just knew because everybody has a website and everybody and their dog needs to have a website these days. So if that's you, you can put it in the chat. If you had a different reason, you can put that in the chat too, and we can get to that. But essentially, generally speaking, I'd say there are probably 3 top reasons that people think they need to have a website. One is for online presence and availability, because a website is 24/7. It works on no matter what time zone you're in, what location you're in. You're not relying on business hours to be able to access the information that you're looking for. Number 2 would be for that credibility and brand image. So that's to validate your brand positioning, your brand message. It would be to verify your brand reputation or to maintain your brand reputation and that consistency. And of course, it's for those first impressions of your brand, especially for those of us that don't have a physical store. That might be the only first impression that we have a chance to make. So number 3 would be around business growth and customer engagement. That usually comes along later after we've had a website for a few years and we start to wonder what exactly we're doing. But those are the pieces that are potentially really powerful tools for your website. And then a bonus about having a website at all versus anything else is that you own your website content, generally speaking. If you are relying on social media to get the word out about your business, you don't own that content. You're not in control of that content. And if that social media platform changes how it does things and your stuff disappears from your customers' feeds, there's nothing you can do about it. You're just scrambling, right, to figure it out. So if there's anything new or surprising to you about any of that, feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to keep going. So once we have a website, no matter how we came around to having the website in the first place, we're bombarded with all of this advice, right? Even us as web designers, my email inbox is full every day with spam. People saying, oh, now you need to do this. Now you need to do this other thing. Oh, now you better do this. And then there's also the stuff about how you need to build your business using your website. So there's all of this advice, and that's fine. Like, some of it is good, some of it's not. But first, we got to reel you back in and get you really solid on that foundation piece of why you have the website in the first place. And I would say that those top three reasons that we went through, the online presence, the availability, the credibility, all of that stuff, that's all really good. But at the end of the day, your website needs to serve your customer. So there's sort of a predominant theme, I think, for a lot of websites, that website owners think that it's to serve their business. And that's not untrue. But the only way it's going to serve your business is if it serves your customers first, right? Otherwise, your business website ends up being an extension of your ego. And if it's not serving your customers, it's not going to translate into more business for you. So the intentions around, like, behind having a website usually boil down to building awareness. But the reality is, at the end of the day, as a business, we need money to survive and we need money to succeed. So although some of us, especially the female entrepreneurs that I talk to, we often struggle with that money conversation. It tends to be like, might feel a little bit crass, might feel undignified, but it's reality, right? Your business can't and won't survive without making money, and we won't make money or we'll make less money if our websites don't serve our customers. So before we go any further, I just want to point out, and this was specifically, Max might appreciate this comment if you can hear us. This is not a conversation around visual or graphic design. This is something that I think I often run across a lot as a web designer. We're not going to talk about visual or graphic design at all, other than to say that we're not going to talk about it. It has no real place in the conversation around the foundational piece of your website, which is how the website works. I will take a couple minutes to say why, as a little disclaimer, but then we're going to get out of that rat race and get on to the good stuff. So the website's visual look is like that iceberg. We always use the iceberg as an analogy for stuff, and that top 10% is the visual look. It's like the icing on the cake of your, if I'm going to mix my analogies. The top 10% is the visual look, and the 90% below that is everything else that makes the website work. So that top 10% only looks, air quotes, a certain way to our own eyes, on our own device, on our own internet connection. It's going to look completely different to another user who has their own device settings, their own preferences. Maybe they're in rural Nova Scotia where the website or the internet is not that fast. And we don't have any control over those preferences, nor should we. So when we say your website needs to work and it needs to work well, we're not going to get all caught up in whether your call to action buttons are blue or whether they're orange. We're not going to talk about whether you've got a fancy widget up here or if that same fancy widget's over there. It doesn't mean that those things don't have an impact for those of us that have visual, abilities on when we're looking at websites. But in the grand scheme of things, they actually only impact a few users. And those users are usually the ones that have the same user preferences that you do. And that's not all of your clients, right? So instead, what we're going to talk about today are the strategies that help to bring your visitors to you in the first place. So, hi, Maxwell. I see you've got some headphones. Can you hear us now?
Attendees disclosure.
Can you hear me?
Yay, there you are. Hi, Max. You've missed all the good stuff.
I heard quite a bit of it, but
oh, good.
yeah, it's interesting that my job here today is to talk about accessibility, and I've spent the last 40 minutes struggling with the lack of it in the Windows version of GoToMeeting. So I'm now over on my MacBook, which is dealing with it much better. Which, as you remember from last night, our exchange on LinkedIn, I anticipated that GoToWebinar would play nicer with Windows, Google, and Chrome than it does with Mac, and totally wrong. But very happy that I'm finally here.
Oh, me too. I'm so glad you were able to sort that out. Thanks for persevering, Max. We
Well,
appreciate that.
that's what us entrepreneurs do. I mean,
That's right.
if you don't have resilience, you will develop it, or you will not be an entrepreneur for very long.
That's that is totally true. And you know what? You got in just as I finished my little. I'm almost finished my little overview, and I was about to get into the actual conversation. So your timing is impeccable. So well done. Your resilience was
Thank you. I
perfect.
appreciate it. I'm
Yeah.
just glad I didn't mess up anything on your side. So I'm having a good day.
Not as well. Not now that you're here, we can proceed. It's great. All right. So that's wonderful. So we're talking about strategies, right, to bring in our website visitors. Um, so if you have a website, ultimately you have a website because you need to make money and you need your website to work. So in the digital world that we all live in today, most of us don't have physical brick and mortar stores, right? Especially coming out of the pandemic. Um, so rather than a physical front door with a "come in, we're open" sign, our website is our virtual front door. So in marketing terms, we usually talk about the website as being the top of the funnel. It's sort of the first stage of your customer's journey. Um, but either way, whether they're finding you because they found you on Google, or they were referred to you by somebody else, or you gave someone a business card, or maybe like Max, they were listening to your podcast and they wanted to find out more about you. Your website is like the come in and learn more function for your business. It validates your business and your brand. And if we're lucky, or if we've been very intentional in our web design, it might even serve as a welcome, you're in the right place. My product or service solves your problem. Sign up right now. Don't go somewhere else. That's perfection when it comes to our websites. So for your website to make you money, then you need it to work, and you need it to work well. And I think for everyone here, we already know that the more visitors our website can get, the better our chances of success, right? But there's lots of different ways that people tell us that we can achieve that. Some of them are more effective than others. There's also a lot of information out there online. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. There's lots of conflicting stuff, and you can go down these rabbit holes trying to find the best ways to go about bringing those eyeballs to your business. So one of the things I want to point out is that over the last year, we've noticed that business owners, we think, are becoming more aware of the user's journey online. Google Analytics, even with their latest update in July of 2023, which turned advertisers' world upside down for a while. That was really fun. It introduced a lot more attention to the individual user and the path that they follow to get to your website. It was great because essentially, in a nutshell, it means that when you look at your website analytics in GA4, those numbers are a little bit more relevant and accurate than they used to be in the previous version. So that's great. But the best thing about focusing on the user journey is that it's focusing on your user's experience on your website. And the user experience takes into account everything we're going to talk about today, because it's all about making sure that once your user lands on your website, they have a good user experience with you. Which is like when they walk in your front door of your store or your office, right? You don't want to piss them off. You want them to have a good experience with you, and therefore with your brand when they interact with your website. So I'm going to check in because I know we do have a few attendees here, and I don't know if anybody has started chatting or not. But first I want to check in and say, when I use the phrase boosting traffic organically, I wonder what that means for you. What's your interpretation of an organic growth or an organic growth strategy? Are there any comments anybody in the chat would like to make around that? Catherine, do you see anything on there?
Well, with this particular interface, we have a chat and we have questions like in separate categories. So I see a couple questions that have come up here.
Okay. Are they related to? Okay.
People just basically saying why they're interested in being here. Alexis says everyone and their dog has a website. I thought I should too.
Yeah.
Jim Morris says, I knew I needed a way to scale my presence internationally.
Nice.
And that's it. A question about if this was just targeted at women, this webinar, but no, of course not. It's
no. I mean, my business does focus primarily on female founders and female entrepreneurs, but it is not, it's information that will be valuable to anybody. So that's cool.
So,
Sure.
Steph, if you don't mind, could I ask you a question?
Of course.
Do you believe that there is anything left that's honestly completely organic? Because it seems to me that pretty much everything that we consider organic started with some sort of action on our part or on the parts of some of our followers.
That is such an awesome question, because that's exactly what I was going to say, Maxwell, about organic growth. Well done. That was really cool. So that was like the perfect segue. I couldn't have set that up any better. I was in a workshop that my business coach provided a couple months ago, and she was talking about how organic is usually includes a sort of an element of chaos about it, like it's uncontrolled, that it's unplanned, that it's accidental, and maybe even that it's inconsistent. So organic on its own is not necessarily great. And whether there is a potential of something being organic or not, like Maxwell was just saying, I think is a really good point. My business coach wanted the people in her workshop to consider proactive growth rather than just it being sort of happening willy-nilly, like something going viral, or whatever. But I love this idea of like proactive organic, because it's something that you are causing to happen, rather than something that's just going to add a pile of stress, the way that like an actual organic viral sensation might do. So we're going to try to merge those two ideas. So we want to focus on unpaid traffic, which is sort of the classic definition of organic traffic. And we want to do it in sort of a proactive manner so that we can still sort of maintain some control of it. So we want to be proactive in the way we boost the organic traffic to our websites. Does that sound good?
Right. Now, to me, if I'm following our approach here, that would seem to take a lot of stress off of me as an entrepreneur, because it doesn't keep me continually trying to figure out what Google Analytics is after, or what the other search engine analytics. It takes a lot of the gamesmanship out of it, and to me, that seems to put more of the effort back on doing the work as opposed to trying to figure out what the heck they want me to say.
Yeah, 100%. And to actually providing valuable, useful content to our user, right? Which is all about making sure that website is serving our customer and not just trying to serve some mathematical algorithm. And actually, what we often say to our clients and anybody that we're talking to about websites is that if your goal is to get to #1 on Google, then you're barking up the wrong tree. It's not going to serve you in any way. And like you said, Matt, like that's a lot of effort and a lot of work and time and energy. And sometimes you'll end up as that #1 or #2 or #3, and those people that are seeing that are not your people anyway. So it's a lot of work with very sometimes limited returns or even negative returns if it's impacting your brand the wrong way, right? So yeah, so that's really cool. So again, just to recap, we're not talking about visual layout and design of the website. That's not what we're talking about here today at all. But so I have a question to get us started with the conversation piece of this, or the formal conversation piece. And I think I see something. Oh, Afton has to leave at 2. Okay, that's totally okay. Or at the top of the hour, I should say, because I don't know what time it is for you guys. That's perfectly fine. We will kick you out when we have to kick you out. So the first question I want to ask the group here today is probably something that somebody would have typed into Google at some point in your career. What is the #1 thing that you have done for boosting traffic to your website? And that could be your own website or a client website, depending on the type of work that you're doing. Afton, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, I can take that, absolutely. For clients, it's definitely our focus. I think a lot of the times as service providers and entrepreneurs, we are a lot better at doing for clients than what we can do for ourselves or what we have time to do for ourselves. But certainly for clients, it has been, and again, I'll preface this by saying it actually depends on your marketing goals, but for our clients, it has been through their blog. And so we've had clients say that that brings in 15 times more leads than any other channel, but that is because that was their strategy and they were focusing on that. And so to your earlier point, Steph, about how much time and effort that takes, it absolutely does. And I think even it's not enough to say, okay, let's publish at a high velocity on the blog. Like, you have to go right back to the start where your brand messaging is in place, you know, where you have the right audience alignment, because like you said, Steph, everything comes back to how does the content actually serve your customers. And so there's so much work that needs to be done before just simply starting to publish at volume. But you know, let's say that you do have all of those pieces in place and you decide that, yes, we want to focus on this channel for organic lead generation, then absolutely, you know, that can be done. And I think it depends on the size of business too, right? Because we have helped our customers reach the top spot in Google, but when those are large enterprises, right? And so they do have the budget for lots of blogs. They do have, you know, that ability to publish at volume. And so I think it's just always about what is going to be realistic. And absolutely, it doesn't have to be getting to #1 in Google, but what it could be in place of that is, you know, making sure that if you are publishing blog content on your website, that it's original. You know, there's tons of information out there right now about how search is changing with AI, and Google itself is talking about that as well. And original content's becoming more important than ever. And by that, I mean things that are informed by subject matter expert interviews. And so it's just thinking about what you can offer to make sure that if you are publishing content, it's really high quality. But I'd say that that's certainly the #1 way that we've helped our clients bring traffic to their website.
Yeah, and I love that. Like it is, it's all about the intention behind it, right? So it kind of comes back to that, why do you have the website in the first place? You know, because sometimes we come into websites that have been around for a while and they've had blogs and maybe they haven't been updated in 2 or 3 years. And maybe they were like this, they were treated as like an online filing cabinet for all of the blog writers' thoughts and opinions. And sometimes that stuff, there is really useful content in there. But then like what's the point of it? You know, like, and that doesn't mean it's bad, but it means that we need to try to be strategic around how we use this content, right? Because the reality is too that if you can have a lot of stuff on your website, and if the search engines start to perceive it as being not providing a good user experience, that's not going to help you either. And it's not just Google, right? That's the other thing too. Like it's not, and the AI thing, we don't have to get into that today, but you know, the whole nature of, I think it would be safe to say that the whole nature of SEO being around search engines per se is one thing, and that maybe that focus needs to change, and it needs to focus on the user and your customer and what they're actually looking for, and trying to provide that information. And then you'll work really, that your results will be really good, hopefully, in the search engines for those specific answers, you know, those specific solutions, but not necessarily, unless you're a large company, like you said, often that has the budget and the focus and the ability to provide a ton of really useful content to a very broad audience. And that's totally cool. But I like the idea of it being realistic as well.
Yeah,
so, yeah. How would you say, can you share how you measure those successes?
So with our clients, typically when we work with in-house marketing teams, that is actually something that they'll measure. So sometimes they'll measure traffic. So for example, we've had clients report back that, you know, they're getting 30,000 hits a month in the top spot in Google for a post that we wrote. We have other clients who, I know we're not going to talk too much about visual calls to action, but what they'll do is they'll have different calls to action at the bottom of each blog post, going to a lead magnet that they've created. So again, a helpful resource, something that's actually useful. And so they'll measure the success you know, by looking at not only what traffic is coming in, but what actions are they taking once they've actually come in. So are they reading the full blog post? Are they clicking to download the resource at the bottom? What happens after that? You know, now they're on the email list. So how many emails are they opening? Are they clicking through to things that are being shared in the emails? And so they'll measure it that way and sort of see what that entire funnel from, you know, bringing someone to the website for their initial visit through the rest of it, how that's performed.
Awesome. Yeah, and there's that intention again, right? It's all around having that information and setting those metrics so that you can make those decisions, and then you can assess it and see what was successful and what wasn't. Has anybody else here tried that? Tara, Max, have you got anything you can add to that?
Well, I think that Afton is, she's hit it on the head, is that generating the traffic only to bring the traffic. If the content isn't engaging, and you know the content isn't built to service the customer, if we go back to the right at the beginning step of what you were talking about, then it's going to quickly become old, stale, and irrelevant. It's not going to help you in any way in any of the search engines. It'll start to harm you. And it will start to be very, when you think of the back end of the website, it's actually just, it's going to slow down the entire system. So for me, I think you are completely correct in that when you build content, build it with intent, build it with a measurable, and the measurable should never be traffic, to be honest, because getting the traffic is one thing, getting engaged traffic is very, very different. Maybe you only need 10 people versus 100, but my opinion. But I'm also, you know, as I've gone through, and my perspective is always from retail. It really is always about e-commerce. How do I drive traffic to the website to engage in the product with hopefully the desire for conversion online or conversion in store? So we also look at content outside of consumer content for engagement. We look at product content. And can that product content, is it quality? Is it different? Because oftentimes when you create content on a website, if it's the similar or the same as, and I think that's going to be an implication of AI, if it is similar to all of your competitors or every other website that is out there, it will actually be detrimental to you. So for us, it was always, you know, creating content that tied into our brand, but also was relevant to the vendor product.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that, because you know, I've worked on e-commerce websites for small organizations that when they were entering in all of their product data, they were copying it from the manufacturer. I was like, well, that's, I totally get why you're doing that, but I'm not sure at the end of the day that's actually going to do you any good as far as the website goes, right? Like how is a search engine going to know? And chances are they're going to go to the manufacturer as the authority on that particular product, right? So yeah, it's tricky. Hey, Max, do you have anything? Do you have anything you would say about this? Like, what was the number one thing you've done? Would you say?
Well, I would say the number one thing that I have done has been creating content, but that has been blog posts, that's been recording a podcast and being on other people's podcasts, and lately also as a contributing writer. And the one thing I was impressed with by what the one lady said a little while ago is, and I'm impressed with it because it's an optimistic viewpoint, is that artificial intelligence, because it's going to create a lot of false or, you know, non-human content, let's call it, is only going to make more valuable the truly unique, authentic content that's created by human beings who are sharing their personal experiences or, you know, their deep knowledge of the product or service. So definitely it's creating the content, it's content focused at your intended audience. It's deciding what success looks like you and setting in place in the beginning a way to measure whether or not you are successful. And I was listening to them talk about e-commerce, and one thing that I think stands out a lot for me, and this is from the accessibility point of view, is that when a website takes the time to include the alternative text for their images, when
Mm-hmm.
they make sure that all their buttons and links and tabs are properly labeled, when they make sure that their forms for checking out and purchasing are all working, so that I don't spend an hour on a website only to find out that no, I cannot buy that that shirt, that tie, and that pair of pants that I was looking at. Those are the kind of things that are memorable, that stand out, and can easily be used to set you apart from everybody else that, as you said, is using manufacturer specs or using the cookie cutter marketing language that they'll get from AI or that they'll get from a textbook. So the more unusual, the more different, the more value you can add, especially if it's in an area that nobody else is considering at the time, is definitely an advantage.
Yeah, we're all nodding along, Max. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I love that because I think that, you know, there's a lot of concern and worry in the industry right now around AI, and this idea that people can use it to replace to use it as like a writing tool and a writing prompt. A writing prompt is one thing, but as a writing tool, that's something else entirely. And it's this idea that we're just going to further further inundate the internet with a bunch more redundant, useless, probably incorrect crap is alarming. But it's another part of why we're always talking about to our clients about making sure that you're keeping your website up to date, that maybe your blog doesn't have a bunch of outdated stuff that's harming your search results and maybe doesn't reflect your business anymore. Like that would be my story, right? That I did my number one thing for boosting traffic. I was writing blog articles and that was fine, except that the most popular blog post that I ever wrote, this was a number of years ago when I was still offering graphic design. And the number one blog post on my website that was bringing in all kinds of traffic was about sizing your business logo. And I stopped doing graphic design like 6 years ago. And all of those people that were coming to the website for that purpose, like I had to make that, because I was tracking it and I could see what was going on. I could say, okay, who are these people? Do I want these? Like, are these people that are ever actually going to work with me? And what do I want to do with all this content? You know, do I want to try to repurpose it somehow? Do I want to just say, nope, I'm just going to unpublish this and let the chips fall where they may, which is what I ended up doing. But at least it was an intentional choice, you know, and it wasn't around that sort of what's the word? Not the panic, but that scarcity mindset around, you know, these people are coming, I don't want to lose them. I don't want to lose that potential to convert them into my real people. But at the end of the day, those people were not my real people. You know, they were just randos, which is fine.
So,
but
and you know, they weren't even the right people for your previous business, because
no,
that's a post about how to size a logo. That's a do-it-yourself post. That's the kind of post that's going to make them think that I don't need to hire Steph to create my logo. Just my 2 cents, girl.
Here's your answer. Yeah, and you know what? Nowadays they could probably just go on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will go surf through the internet and tell them 110 different things, and they can figure that out, and that's fine.
I'd love to jump in on this stuff, if I may.
Yes, yeah, please.
I think that what we're all speaking about here, it really comes back to the importance of almost like if you look at the website as if it's like a garden that needs to be tended to, right? Because I think so often when we think about what's, you know, the number one way to bring more people to a website, our minds often go right to, okay, well, we need to do more. So we need to publish more. We need to, and in a lot of cases, like, yes, we do want visibility. And I agree completely with what Maxwell said, like being on podcasts, you know, appearing on a panel like this. There are other ways other than just creating content on your own site, certainly to increase your visibility. But one thing I think we often forget about is the actual optimization of blog posts or other content on the site. So it's not just a one and done. And I think like what Tara said, if we're not doing that, it can do more harm than good. And so it's about keeping the site I don't know, I guess a reasonable enough size or sort of functionality that you can go in, or that you can have someone like your company staff that helps people with this and maintain it and make sure that it's actually healthy and performing properly. And so I think sometimes we're all focused on, you know, the creation, when we need to look at what's already there and how we can actually make that content better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would go back to say that a lot of that is coming from that advice that we get online. Like, now we have a website, now what do we do next? And then the next thing is to do the blog, or the next thing is to do ads or whatever, to try to drive that traffic. And I think a lot of the times with the clients that we see, you know, those websites were fine when they were first made, you know, but things change so much all the time. Like Tara, we didn't even really get into, I didn't allow you guys to introduce yourselves properly. But like Tara's experience is more in the, I would say, corporate kind of retail end. And, you know, she's been involved in projects that were totally pioneering kind of things. Like Tara, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with websites?
Well, and I mean, I launched our first website in 2004, and we were actually launching the website as a beta for the US, so that they didn't have to make the investment there, they can make it in Canada. And at that point in time, you know, I built the website. So we only had a handful of pages that grew and grew and grew. So we always had the strategy for hygiene, always had the strategy for, you know, adding, removing content. And then, you know, in my last role, I inherited a website that had no hygiene, that had hundreds of thousands of pages and pages of content. So to look at the difference between the two, it's incredible, the impact of bad hygiene and what it can mean to your business. But yes, I mean, I've spent the time, you know, I think Google and I have both been in the digital business the same amount of time. And, you know, never doubt the impact and the advancements with Google and how they rank and drive relevance and can absolutely impact your business. That is one of the first places I always focus on with any of my team members, is them understanding the requirements of Google. Understanding Google Merchant Center, understanding Google My Business, understanding all of the impacts that Google puts in place to the relevancy and the ranking of your business. And if you have somebody that can live and breathe in that world, that person is the person that can feed into your content strategy or your product strategy, or even your, you know, your visual. Like, I know we're not talking about it, and it's almost like you said, we can't talk about it, so we all want to talk about it, but how you create that your journey, because they absolutely understand how it's going to be perceived and measured. And I say Google, but by all search engines. So it's very, very interesting, because it is all about site structure, site hygiene, and the actual planned customer journey. What is the intent of the traffic that you're bringing? And if you can, you know, understand and measure those three things, you will have success. I could go forever.
Yeah. No, I agree. Because, you know, when we come into websites that have been around for a while and they need that hygiene, and it's usually like that. First, we got to dial back and go, whoa, what's the point of this website? What is the next step in your customer's journey, like, to work with you? And then to say, okay, how can we best serve that with this website? What do we need to repurpose, let's say, and what can be jettisoned, literally? Because at the end of the day, the lighter, faster, most relevant is going to outperform anything else. And as we as users and customers get conditioned to expect certain things from the websites that we go to, like even like whether we're talking about accessibility stuff, which should be at the forefront of everybody's mind, because if you have good accessibility on your website, you've got good SEO, you've got a good user experience for everybody. But even without that piece, I think I just lost track of what I was trying to say. I got all excited for a minute. Was that, the customers, because the standards change all the time. And so we've conditioned ourselves to expect really fast, instant results. And I would also say, and I say this a lot, that coming out of the pandemic, the cognitive load that all of us are operating under is way higher than it used to be. And so your messaging and the way that you're delivering your message needs to be as simple and clear and easy to understand as possible, which also benefits everybody. But it benefits people, you know, whether they're on the bus, on their old crappy mobile, and they just want to find out something really fast, you know, versus, you know, maybe they're at work and they're looking something up and they shouldn't be. And, you know, anyway, yeah, it's kind of fun. So any other tips to follow that up?
I mean, I would just quickly add stuff
Yeah.
that I think I love what you just said. Clear is better than clever. I would like everyone to just write that down because, and that's not really about, you know, the whole traffic piece, but I think it does speak to what you're saying, Steph. I think that the messaging, and that's why that does need to be dialed in really right from the beginning so that people can understand when they go to the website what they're supposed to do there and what can help them with.
Yeah, and I would say too that following on from that, I think it's a constantly evolving thing as well. You know, clarity is not easy. It's a lot harder to say things in 10 words versus 50. And it takes a lot of practice and a lot of different iterations. And so this, I think the other thing that people, entrepreneurs in particular, we need to be comfortable with the fact that we might need to experiment and try and reiterate and remind ourselves that the website is not a once and done. You know, whether it was done a year ago or 10 years ago, chances are it's going to need to be looked at and tended, like you said, Afton. I use the mechanics metaphor a lot because I think that when I got into web design, I thought it was like this, it was pretty and it was, you know, I was doing all these lovely things. It was very creative and it is all of those things. It can be, but it's also very unsexy. And it's very much more like a mechanic, you know, I think these days. And I think there's a lot to be said for, you know, taking your car to the oil lube place where they'll do it in an hour and a half or whatever. And I can go keep working on my business and not waste my entire day doing something that somebody told me I should be able to do, or, you know, whatever that I really clearly can't do. I mean, I probably could, but I'm going to make a mess and I'm going to break something and I'm going to be mad as a hornet. I'll have a horrible day. And, you know, that'll be all that time gone when I should have been doing something related to my business, right? So
Yep.
I think that was a little bit of a tangent. Sorry about that. I'm curious, Catherine, if you're still available,
Yep.
is there anything going on in the chat that we should be aware of? Any comments or questions about any of this so far?
I've got two questions.
Oh,
Well, one is more of a comment. Says Jim says, love the accessibility focus. Something
yes.
my site is woefully in need of.
Jim, we're going to fix that. Don't worry, we've got you.
And the second is, if I paid for SEO 4 years ago, is it still good? From Alexa.
Well, I know what I'm going to say. Does anybody here would like to chime in?
My belief is no. Yeah, 4 years ago, if you had said 4 months ago, I might be okay. There's probably still some impact, but
Yeah.
no, I think SEO, whether it's a garden or whether it's the mechanic, it is something that constantly has to be tweaked and measured and tweaked and measured. There's too much change going on in technology for you not to be looking at it, you know, once a quarter at minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that would be my response as well. I think SEO is something that's not really well understood for a lot of folks. And I think it's another thing that people think they should be able to understand and do on their own. Kind of like the blogging. Most people think they should be able to figure out how to do that on their own. But you know, true SEO is a long game for sure. But that doesn't mean it's do it once and forget it. It's going to evolve just the same way your business does, the same way the technology does. Just because it worked for Google last year doesn't mean it's going to work for Google this year, or the other search engines, or ChatGPT, or TikTok, or whatever. So that's a great question.
I have another.
Okay.
Another question here from Jim says, SEO feels ephemeral, like a big black hole with lots of gravitational pull. How do we manage that without dumping lots of money into it?
Yeah, well, so I can answer this one. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say before I jump in on that?
No, I was just wanting to expand on your mechanics example.
Okay.
I think if you expand that out to say, a Ferrari or a Rolls Royce or one of those really expensive cars that pretty much has to make it to the mechanic once a month or once every 6 weeks, or really bad things happen that cost really crazy amounts of money. I'm thinking that,
Sure.
that to me, really brings your thing home. And of course, I think we can sometimes overcome poor SEO if we have a really targeted website, and we make it easier for people to know, like you said, why they are at the website and what they're supposed to do there. But SEO, trying to overcome bad SEO is a real challenge, and it is one of those things that, as much as we don't really enjoy doing it, somebody has to do it on a regular basis, or you're stuck at the house because you can't drive anywhere.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I would say too that the SEO, Jim, it depends on your strategy and your intention. So if your goal is to hit #1 on Google or pick a phrase, then you're gonna have a very specific strategy to get you there. And it's going to be different if your strategy involves more like something like what we do when we're redoing websites and revamping them and rejuvenating them. And we do a lot of on-site SEO work. We don't do a lot of off-site stuff. That sort of gets into some really highly technical, and I don't like it, to be honest. But the on-site stuff works really well because it ties in beautifully with the accessibility piece. Because if you make it really user-friendly, it makes for really clean code, really lightweight, and it makes it more logical. And once it's more logical, it's already going to be better for the search engines. So we find that doing all of those things together works really, really well for that initial sort of impact. The long-term SEO planning and strategy, that's something where you would get more involved with someone like Afton, or you might do something, I don't know, but it's usually around content strategy, when you get into the long range planning. So yeah, I'm not sure. I hope that answered your question, Jim. You can.
And then we have another one that asks, how long does it take to see results in SEO?
Afton? So, okay, Afton, can you answer that one first?
Yeah.
I think of the four of us here, I think you have the longest range sort of strategy with your work. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think, again, it does go back to what Steph said. It is a long game, typically. I mean, certainly we have had clients that would rank in high positions on Google after just a month, but that's about what was done beforehand, right? And so that was actually, and that's not something we would even take credit for, because those clients are big enough companies that they have numerous companies writing content for them. They have a high domain authority already. They have tons of backlinks. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. I would say that's not typical, and to generally expect that, again, it's looking at results. It's, well, what type of result are we looking at? Usually for people we work with, it is, moving up in the search results and generating leads from blog posts. And typically that does take, several months at least. And it's a continued effort. So it would need to be ongoing content creation. That's been my experience. Obviously, we're not talking about paid today. That can accelerate results, certainly. But yeah, it's typically a long game, I would say.
Yeah, and I would say from our aspect, because we do the on-site SEO with the rejuvenation work that we do, we track all of our projects. So after you've done like a big revamp, we track them for 3 months afterwards, and that we already start to see significant improvements in your SEO traffic, depending on what those, what are those intended metrics are that we've set at the beginning. But yeah, it is a long game, absolutely, and 6 months is a reasonable time frame to look at. So things like for folks, I don't know if there's anybody on the call today that's doing a lot of e-commerce stuff with like an online store per se, but you know, if there's like a holiday focus, like Christmas coming up, if you're trying to implement an SEO strategy to boost your search engine results for a specific holiday, if you can look at least 3 months prior, 4 months would be better, 6 months would be great, you know, and then build up that time frame, and that's when you're going to start to really see some results. That doesn't mean you can't do something a month prior and see some really big benefits if it's done strategically, intentionally, and if you have realistic goals. But yeah, for overall purposes, 3 to 4 months, if you're leading up to a launch or a holiday sort of a campaign, is a really good target in our experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're not going to talk about paid today, but I did some paid ads on one of my books last year, and we started the paid ads the end of November, and I really didn't start to see the new sales from those paid ads until the 1st of January.
Oh, is that right? So even with a paid strategy, it still took some time, hey?
Yes, it still took some
Yeah.
time. You still have to build up that momentum or inertia.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't do a lot with paid strategies myself. I try to avoid them, but that makes sense. And I think they have a very specific use case, like you say, like if you got a book launch or something coming, you know, running a paid ad campaign at that stage would be great.
Right. I avoid paid pretty much at all costs, and pretty much anything I do. I've only done 2 podcast interviews in 10 years where I actually paid the host, and both of those were like a $20 donation. And I only did the paid ads on the book because it was a company owned by a friend of mine who, quite frankly, wanted to prove her worth. So I was very happy to give her a try, and it was nice to have those sales. Those sales when they came in January were pretty nice to have.
I bet they were. Yeah, you're not going to say no to that. That's awesome. Yeah. And you never know, right? I mean, it's a lot of being an entrepreneur is experimenting and trying things out, and that doesn't usually mean you experiment once, right? Sometimes you have to experiment a couple of times with the same thing before you can sort of get the hang of it. So there's something to be said for that as well, I think. I'm curious. So we've talked about the number one thing so far. Would you do it again? Or like given the amount of work and everything that was involved in leading up to that tactic that you used, would you do it again?
I absolutely would, and I would encourage everyone else to understand how search engines are measuring and align and build your site to do so. I think I missed that piece, but you are 100% right. On-site SEO is the foundation. That's where you start. Doing off-site SEO when you don't have anything that's happening in your website causes it's going to stall. It's kind of like paid ads. I would never do paid ads if I didn't have an organic strategy that you could actually balance and complement. But I would absolutely do it again, and I would encourage others to start thinking through site structure. How is Steph helping me build my site? How is Afton helping me? You know, then build all my content to follow it.
Yeah. Well, I will say, so this is sort of leading into the next. I was going to ask, what is the least effective thing that you've done for boosting traffic? And I can start that off by sharing a story of crappy SEO tactics. So coming into a website for a client that was designed by some Yahoo in some other area, I won't name, and it was, as far as I can tell, he used every sketchy SEO strategy in the book, and it was awful, and it created a mess, like an absolute mess. And it was a mess on every possible level. And Maxwell, I'm actually curious. I have a bit of a question for you around this. So this client website that we rebuilt and fixed up, they had the previous web company that they had used had created about 125 fake websites, all of which were designed to direct, to promote traffic to their real website. And all of those fake websites were using like keyword stuffing, like all of the really bad stuff that you get blacklisted for now these days with Google. And they had things like, you know, keywords in white text on a white background. Like it was so upsetting to deal with it. It was really, really gratifying to clean it all up and just make all of that stuff go away. But what I was wondering about, Maxwell, with you specifically with the accessibility piece, was what would happen if you landed on one of those websites, one of those fake websites, which is full of all of those really lousy strategies. I have no, I mean, I'm guessing that they wouldn't have been accessible in the first place. So I don't know if you would have actually been able to interact with it or get any content from it. But I just wonder, do you ever come across that kind of thing?
I still come across it. I used to come across it most often with GoDaddy created sites for some reason. I used to cringe whenever I would click on a URL and I would find myself on a site created on GoDaddy. It's gotten much better, but it's usually I can navigate a site. The problem is, and this is the concern for the site owner, is the harder I have to work to find the information, the less likely I am to stay on your site long enough to find the information. So those
100%.
things that person did, they would affect my enjoyment of using their website. And the only way I'm going to do business with that company is if they have no competition. And very few people have no competition. So usually what would happen is I'd try a site like that, and if the 2 or 3 most common methods I use of navigating a website didn't work, then I'd think, well, surely there's somebody else I can get this from and do a search or ask a friend to refer me to somebody else. So, but yeah, and of course, when it comes to text, as long as the text isn't displayed as a link, which most people don't realize how difficult that is for a screen reader. You know how they'll create a text, but the text appears as if it's a link, which makes it a little harder to navigate to read it. So, you know, unless that white on black text was done that way, I would have been able to handle it. I would say for sites like that, the more difficult challenge would be, say, for somebody using a screen magnification option, because with screen magnification, a lot of those people, they change the color contrast for color combinations that make it easiest for them to navigate the screen. And then also when you're using magnification, the higher your magnification, the smaller and smaller chunk of a screen or a website that you can view at one time. So I would say those errors would affect somebody with low vision rather than somebody using a screen reader like myself.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, that's interesting actually, because when we were talking about the paid ads before, I was going to say that one of the worst case scenarios would be that you have a website that's not optimized, it's not user friendly, it's not accessible. You might not know that because maybe you've never had it tested or evaluated or whatever from anybody's perspective other than your own. You might think it works just fine. And then you set up a paid strategy for through whatever platform. And then you're actively paying to drive people to your website, and then they get to your website and they have a crap experience. They can't use it, they can't see it, whatever, they can't understand it. And then you've just paid to shoot yourself in the foot. It's like the worst possible outcome, right? That's terrible.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
You paid to embarrass yourself is what you did.
Yeah, well, yes, and then you get into that brand reputation side of it, right? And then just like you said, Max, like there's other options out there. We're not the only web design agency. Afton's probably not the only blogging, content strategist. Max is, I don't know, maybe you are the only blind blogger. Could be.
Oh. 10 years ago, I was, even then I wasn't the only one, but perception is reality. So I was one of the most prolific on LinkedIn and Facebook at sharing my blogging content. So a lot of people did think I was the only one. And when you are the only visually impaired or paraplegic or hearing impaired person in the group, you generally become whatever the thing is you're good at. Like the
Right.
gentleman who appeared on The Voice a few years ago, they call him Blind Joe. You know, that's I have a friend who is known as Rappin' Ray Charles because he's a blind guy who raps. You know, they generally will hang a moniker on you based on the fact that most people don't have a lot of friends who have disabilities. So no, I was never the only one. I was just the most prolific and the most shameless, if that helps.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so we were talking about the number one thing, right? So then what then on the opposite end of that spectrum would you say in your experience, and I'd like to hear from everybody here, what has been the least effective thing that you've tried?
I wish I could say
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
I do have to hop off, but it's been so wonderful to chat with you all, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's really helpful for folks.
Thank you, Afton. We really appreciate you joining.
Take care.
Good luck
Bye.
for the next.
Bye.
Bye. All right, so Tara and Max, I guess it's up to us. What is the least effective thing that you have tried in your history of website wonderment?
There's been so many, but I will narrow it down. And I think, you know, after going through several experiments and tests through the years, the number one would be reacting to the shiny ball, right? Reacting to the idea of I need to put AI all over my website right now because that's what everybody's talking about. And you know, for me and for the teams that I've had the joy of working with, understanding how everything works together, because it's never just the success of the one channel. Driving something in through this channel to what we just talked about, a terrible website, a broken customer journey with, and the call to action or whatever page you landed me on isn't actually, that doesn't tie back to my original search. I always fault the execution versus the channel. And that's where I say the least effective is when you do something in silo. If you just want to go out and test that one ad, or you only want to do SEM, but you haven't done all of the other 4 steps of following the journey, in my heart, I'm going to say most likely you'll never succeed or not deliver the results that you potentially could.
Yeah. Can you give an example? Do you have like a specific story that comes to mind? Just curious. You don't have to share.
Well, no, and I've done it a few times. You know, I thought at one point in time, I thought affiliate marketing was the end all and be all of everything. I thought this is, you know, working with affiliates to drive traffic to my website is how I'm going to deliver Christmas. And this was in my Toys R Us days. And so we shifted dollars from SEM into, and I'm sorry, I'm talking paid, but I put a lot into the affiliates and the content I fed. And it was a failure because I didn't measure the quality of the affiliate. I didn't actually think about those bad actors who may use the relationship with our website to highlight pricing errors. And if there was a pricing error on my website, it was immediately pushed out virally through all of these affiliates. And then I sold out before anyone on the team was actually aware. So, you know, and I'm the constant optimist, but understanding and knowing all the implications of any way that you're driving traffic into your website, I mean, that's where we all need to start. We all need to understand the goods and the bads of what could happen.
Yeah, that's cool. Max, what about you? What would you say is the least effective strategy you've tried? Is there one?
I'm not really known for strategy. If you've seen any of my content, you know that I'm really more known for action and then figuring things out as I go. So strategy has not always been there. But as I look backwards, I feel like a couple of things that, while they were good experiences and there are some benefits still coming from them, I feel like face-to-face has not really been good for me. I feel like my ebooks have not really been good for me. I feel like a lot of effort and time and money went into them, and while they created authority and are great as far as establishing credibility for paid speaking, for consulting, for other things. I don't have writing the next book on my list of top 5 things that Max has to do over the next year or so, because
Mhm.
the effect that the next book might have on my work in accessibility or bookings as a speaker or a consultant, I just don't see the connection. And a few years ago, I was writing about a book every year, 15 months, and it was one of those things I enjoyed doing. I love writing, and I still would enjoy the idea of doing another book, but if you only got so much time, you have to evaluate what's working and what's working for you right now, because it also benefited me more when my focus was coaching and I was really leaning into the inspirational side of my personality as opposed to the informational person who is sharing everything I've learned over the years about accessibility to help business owners grow their businesses and their brands. So a little of me has also changed along the way. But if I'm honest, the ebooks, especially after the first one, were not a great return on my investment for my business.
And did you sell them on your website? Like, was that part of the?
I've sold them on my website. I sold them through Amazon and other places, and I also sold them in person.
Okay.
And so it's the result. For not that I believe the experts who said that if you write a book you're going to get a lot of traffic and a lot of money. I wrote my first book on a dare, actually, because somebody challenged me to write a book for a virtual summit. So
Awesome.
yeah, like I said, I'm not really a planner or a strategic person. I'm learning to be so as I get older, which is why my new podcast on accessibility won't start until after the first of the year, because I realize now that a successful podcast is not something you start on Monday and have your first content go live on Friday.
That's so surprising to hear. That's cool though, because I think there's a lot to be said for trying things, and like, because we talked about the experimenting, right? And so maybe those ebooks were experiments for you, and maybe they were the right fit for you then, as far as like a strategy, whether you were using it as a strategy or whether it was an accidental strategy. But as you have evolved and as your business has evolved and your focus has evolved, your strategy, quote unquote, around how you drive interest in your business through your website or elsewhere is going to change. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? So I think
it does. It makes perfect sense, and I appreciate you finding a positive word. Experimentation. I'm really good on experimentation. I have experimented my butt off for 15 years.
That's right. That's right. You know what? I often think the whole thing about being an entrepreneur is around your mindset, and it's changing your mindset around something like maybe sometimes people will use the word failure as a very sort of personal reflection, and I think that you just need to reframe that as that experiment, and that it's everything we do is a learning experience, whether it's a quote unquote failure or a quote unquote success, because it depends what's that metric, right? Like, how are you measuring that success or that fail? It's just like with the website. Did you make it to #1 as the best web designer? No, but I don't want that. So that was never one of my metrics to start with, right? So it comes back to the intention and strategy, and maybe you don't know that when you get started, but really, why would you? That's something that comes over time.
Yeah, but that is an important comment. We do get to decide what success looks like for us based on our current situation and what our goals are for our business. We get to make those decisions. And another more positive word I like to use, people have said that I'm a jack of all trades, which, as you know, is generally seen as a negative term. I've learned to call myself multifaceted.
Sounds good. I like it. Yeah. Same kind of an idea, right?
In the digital world, I actually started to celebrate failure is now so visual, and when you're on a digital platform, right? When your website doesn't work, everybody and their brother, everyone sees it. It's not like failures of 25 years ago. And oftentimes within business, I celebrate my failures because I think it is a true testament to I'm curious, I experiment, I'm courageous, I'm resilient. I often say to the team, I've broken more than you can ever break in a
Yeah.
website. Like you
Yeah.
can't beat me. And not that that's a challenge, but I've been around a while and
Yeah.
celebrate it.
Yep.
I suggest you check out midwaymarketplace.com from 2008, and we'll compare failures at another time.
Oh
Oh,
boy. Oh boy. So that might take us down a different sort of a road, hey?
it's competition now, Max.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
That's right.
let's just say that I can say this because I have a let's just say that that I had a handicap because I was choosing my colors based on their names rather than what they looked like. So, but
Oh my
I've
goodness. Of course.
I've been told my first website was so vivid and so bright that Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder could have argued over it. I mean, it was bad. I made lots of mistakes. I'd be curious to. I believe you'd probably get a good laugh or smile or something out of it. So if you can find it on archive.org from 2008 or 9. But I will advise you, like I tell everybody else when I tell this story, don't look directly into the monitor, or please wear some sunshades.
That's awesome. I like that. That's really good.
Yeah.
I would say, as far as like my own, so I talked about that blog post where it was driving a lot of traffic, but it was the wrong traffic. That would probably be my big learning curve. The other one for me is actually more of a technical piece, which was that one of my client websites is a charity, and they used to write a lot of articles on their blog. And this was in my early days as a web designer. So I was helping them with their website because I sort of thought that I knew what I was doing. And it's one of the first websites I had that I managed that got hacked. And it was by a group. This was in 2007 or 8, maybe. And it was by a group that at the time they called themselves the White Hat Hackers. And it was, I don't have any, like now, I keep screenshots. I have all sorts of backups, like backups of backups of backups, and I have all sorts of strategies. Back then, I just went into full-on panic. So what they did was, I don't know how they did it because I didn't know what I was doing, and I thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. It's a long time ago, and you learn as you grow, right? So the mistake that I made was somewhere around the security of the website. So these guys got in, and because like I got off so easy, but they took every single article on this website, and there were, I can't remember because I was in full on panic trying to fix them, but it was like 50 plus articles, like blog posts, right? Long form, lots of words. And they took them all and they translated them into, it wasn't lorem ipsum, but it was like they translated into some sort of gobbledygook. So you couldn't actually read it. And then they sent me an email and said, oh, did you know? You've been hit by I can't remember what they said. I just remember going, what? And like total panic. So in that particular case, the error was in making sure that the structure, the foundation of the website was not set up appropriately. And all of that strategy that the group had for writing these fantastic articles that had a lot of website traffic, a lot of interest from their potential customers, that foundational piece was not sufficient. And that was a hell of an experience that I don't ever want to repeat. And I've never had it happen since, but it was really something. It was really something.
Gosh,
So that's what I would say about that. Yeah. So
my biggest fear.
Yeah. And it's something that anybody can get hacked. I think really, and governments and everyone. And if you've had a website for more than, I don't know, let's say 8, 9, 10 years, and you've never been hacked, pretty good. Pretty good. there might be other things, you know, for why that would be, but that's pretty good. Anyway, so that's getting us a little bit off track. So when we were talking about boosting website traffic and doing it organically, but doing it in a proactive way. And so we've tried to talk about some of the stories that we each have had around ways to do that. Catherine, I better check in with you. Is there anything happening in the chat? Any questions that
Funny you should say that. Yes,
Yeah.
the last question was, what's the best channel to drive traffic? Is it the blog or SEO or just the web?
Well, that's going to depend on your intention, right, and your strategy. I think Afton touched on that a little bit earlier when she was talking about writing those blog posts and for where you want the people to go next. So I would suggest that it's around your user journey and what's next for your people. So if you have something coming up, say for an example, you have an event coming up, like maybe Max has like a speaker, you're going to be a speaker at some big summit somewhere, and maybe you want to generate a lot of interest around that, then your strategy is going to be very different for that because it's a specific event with a specific start date. And maybe you have a strategy that's all around, you know, that, and you're going to want to find out where your people are, your potential attendees. You're going to want to maybe do like the shared audience thing, like Max was saying about guest podcasting, to try to boost awareness both of the event, maybe of the venue. But essentially, I think I would say it's all around because my big thing is all around the user experience on your website. So it's trying to figure out who your people are and where they are, and then figuring out how to reach them with those channels. That would be my reaction to that. I think essentially I need more information before we could come up with a strategy.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because depending on who you want to reach, not only age-wise, but with many of the other demographics, will determine how you're going to reach them. I mean, the same message on TikTok, on Facebook, on YouTube will reach 3 totally different audiences.
Absolutely, and it's going to read very differently, right? You
Yes,
can't use the same language in those places. Yeah.
And in order to even, you know, try to have a similar message across each of them, I mean, that is time, resources, dollars. Like for me, my first suggestion would always be local SEO, especially, you know, I've always been corporate enterprise, and maybe just given my digital experience, I often ignore paid ads. I always skip past the paid ads to go to, I do, I always, unless it's a competitor and I want to burn all their money and I want to use all of their SEM dollars. But I trust organic, I trust the local, especially today, like in today's world with local. I can't tell you how often every search ends for me, near me, restaurant near me, shoes near me, you know, camera near me, accountant near me. Everything lands and finishes in near me. So if you're not thinking about how your local search is performing, you're missing out on all of that traffic in and around your home, like from your community. Far more important than ranking #1 in Google.
That's right. Yeah, to some arbitrary area. Yeah, because I know we used to be able to test, you know, we used to do things like open up the browser and test for a client, you know, to see how they come up on the Google or whatever search engine ranking. That's a lot harder to do nowadays, because even if we use like an incognito tab or we go on a VPN or something, we can't really get a true sense because it's all targeted. You know, it's all this targeted marketing, right? So it's really hard to get that across. I think when we're talking with clients, like we have a lot of clients in our regional area in Nova Scotia, and it's really important to them when they have a brick and mortar store, obviously, to have that local search stuff really, really clear. And yet sometimes they'll send us like a screenshot, you know, of where they show up in sort of search engine results, and then we can't duplicate that, you know, like from our end. And we're like, no, you're here, it's good, you're fine. They're like, no, we're down here. I'm like, no. It's just going to be different. So it's really changed how we look at things.
You know, that's kind of like accessibility, because in a lot of cases it's difficult to really judge a website because it's hard to know what platform the person will be viewing that website on, or what technology they will have available to them, or what their ability with that technology or their comfort level with that technology will be. So even if you run some of the better website testing options that are available now on a website to see if it's accessible or not, it's really difficult, because what if somebody is using a browser or a screen reader that your system didn't account for? Or what I like to point out quite often is you can take two people with the exact same disability, with the exact same level of challenge, and their solutions will be different depending on their own personal background before they come to your website. So it's just really hard to judge what is going to be usable or accessible. And it's kind of like with SEO, the best you can do is to try to create content that is very user-friendly based on why are you wanting this person on your website in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we use a lot of those testing tools and those simulation tools as well to try to gauge the accessibility of our sites. And you can't factor in absolutely everybody, but if you can try to capture a pretty wide range, then you're still better off, you know. And it's like you said, like, and I think we said something about this earlier, we can't account for user preferences either. So whether it's accessibility from an ability point of view, or just, you know, I like dark mode, or I don't like dark mode, or, you know, whatever, high contrast or whatever. Yeah, it makes for a very interesting conversation, because people get so caught up in what they think their website looks like, right?
Right, and especially the designer, and that's, you know, that's where I tell people, make it easy for your visitors to communicate with you, so that if they do have a preference issue, or they do have a disability-based accessibility issue, make it easy for them to communicate with you. You avoid the negative feelings and the possible negative press or social media activity by making it easy to communicate and solve the problems in the short term, or to educate the user on how they can navigate your product or your service with what's available right now. Those are, you know, when we make it easy to communicate and collaborate with our visitors, we can address those problems with preference and accessibility. But quite often I find website owners don't make it easy for that to happen.
That's right. Yeah, they bury it, right? And you know what? And I would say, not coming, like, even from just like a general best practice kind of a thing, if your website breaks for some reason, if your contact information is buried in like 6 or 7 or 8 clicks, and it's not really working when you first get there, and then I have to go try to find out how to get a hold of you to tell you it's not working, because I am that person. I'm that person who's like, did you know your contact form doesn't work? Did you know I can't actually see? Did you know it's not, you know, responsive? Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? And yeah, if you bury that information, but again, if you design it with that aspect in mind from the get-go and make it accessible, and then it's a better experience for everybody, no matter what.
That is true. And you know, as to what your example there, my most hated one is when I try to contact somebody and they're still using a security question that doesn't have an audio or non-video option. And then I tried to send them an email or try to contact them some other way to let them know that their CAPTCHA is creating a problem, and the other options have the same darn CAPTCHA. And so I end up having to stalk them on social media and find their direct message and hope somebody's actually reading that inbox.
Yeah. And you know what, for those of us that can see those CAPTCHA, Max, you know, all the boats or all the cars, it's just as hard for us.
Yes.
The letters and numbers, I fail 2 or 3 times. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah. And we are definitely real people. We are not bots. We are coming up to time. Catherine, where are we at for chats, questions, anything that we need to chat about before?
We did have a few questions that came up, but you pretty much answered them organically, I would say.
Very nice. Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, I think we've actually come to the end. We didn't cover quite as much as I was hoping. I had a couple of other questions I was hoping we could chat about, so maybe we'll do this again sometime. I would like to thank you guys, thank the speakers for coming today, Afton as well, even though she had to leave early. I really appreciate your time and your energy in this conversation. I'd like to invite everybody that's attending to be sure to follow each of our speakers today. So we will be sending out an email with links to Tara and Max's and Afton's preferred social media websites, whatever. But if Tara and Max, if you want to tell us right now which of those places would be the best for someone to go follow along with your work.
I am on LinkedIn. I don't have a website, Steph. Maybe that's something for you and I to talk about in future.
Perhaps it is. And Max, what about you? What's your best place?
I too like LinkedIn, where I'm under Maxwell Ivy, but I also do have a website, which is theaccessibilityadvantage.com, and I would love to hear from anybody that's been following us today, and if I can help them at least understand where they're at as far as accessibility on their website, I'd be happy to help out where I can.
Super cool. Thank you. And so my name is Steph. My business website is claritywebdesign.ca. And Afton from Scribe National, hers is scribenational.ca. But again, we'll put these in an email to folks so that it's easier to find. So thank you for that. So thank you to everyone. That is for speakers and attendees for being part of the space today to talk about websites and traffic and best practices. I strongly encourage anyone here today to register for our invite-only webinar, which is next week, which is for doubling your website traffic in 60 days, and that's using our framework. Or you can go straight to our website, book a call, get a consult with us about making your website your #1 action for 2024. This would be a good time to start talking about that, coming up with a strategy, Max, strategy and intention. And thank you again. I really appreciate this. This was a lot of fun, and that was great.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and really enjoyed spending some time with y'all and sharing with the audience.
Thanks for figuring out the Mac there, Max. That was perfect. Awesome. I don't know how to stop this. It might take me a minute because this is a new platform. So thank you again. And if we hang out for a bit, that's not entirely on purpose.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Voiceover on GoToMeeting. Quick GoToMeeting alert.
Catherine, do you know what to do the next year?
Oh, okay.
Oh, I found it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.